to do it in like a big Broadway with a capital B sort of energy. And I want as many women of color as I possibly can have to play on it. And I just kind of want to like make a little statement with that and be like, look, like we can do this kind of music too. We can do this kind of music really well. And the response was so much more enthusiastic than I had expected. And so it grew and has become not only a much bigger thing, but like the majority of my full-time work is now spent on this project, which it just became bigger than I could have ever dreamed of. Yeah, I love it.
Being the first woman of color sound designer on Broadway, and so far number 9 out of a list of women sound designers on Broadway, is very scary. It was scary when I first got hired. It was scary through tech, and it's still scary after the show opens. Of course, I'm happy for myself, but the nervousness comes in when I think about I have the responsibility of making sure my work is good enough that other women of color will start getting hired, not in 10 years, but in 2022 when more of these new shows open. So I'm carrying this burden of, if other women of color do not get on these new shows, does that mean I did something wrong?
Everyone says like there aren't that many, but really there are. We just, I think prior to now, haven't been paying very much attention to them.
What the data shows is that we female directors, particularly musicals, are all over the place in regional theaters and in nonprofits and off-Broadway. But then when it comes to making the jump to Broadway, there's a fall off, and it's pretty drastic.
It's a very male-dominated industry, and that's not true just of audio for theater. It's true for audio in general, or any sort of engineering field, right?
Almost every orchestrator I've ever spoken to can point to a mentor. And there's actually this amazing book, it's called The Sound of Broadway Music. The author's name escapes me in this moment, but it kind of traces the like lineage of mentorship over the past like 150 years in Broadway orchestration. There's rarely, if ever, a woman mentioned in the book.
But there are so many women of different races who I know, who I'm friends with, who I've worked with, who have hired me for jobs, who are out here, who I think are more than qualified to be doing a bunch of these shows.
We mentor people who remind us of ourselves. Like you mentor somebody who's like, that's a mini-me. And so for literally centuries, like mini-me's have always looked a certain way. And I think that the reason there are not more women in this field is because in a craft where you kind of have to like luck out with a mentor to make your way into that, the odds are very, very clearly stacked against people who don't fit into that demographic.